Testing, testing. Hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome to OKC RB. We're doing something a little different today, as you might have noticed if you're a regular attendee or watcher on Twitch. We're doing a career development panel, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But first, I want to take a second to thank the two organizations that help this happen every single month. The first one is Techlahoma. They're a nonprofit that helps support user groups, conferences, meetups, all throughout Oklahoma. They give us pizza and help us organize totally for free. They're incredible. If you would like to help support them, they are donation-based. You can go to donate.techlahoma.org. Very thankful for all the support they give us, as well as Starspace 46, which also gives us this amazing space to do these meetups, also totally for free. You can go to starspace46.com and check out their memberships. They have an awesome co-working space upstairs. So thank you to both of them. Okay, so today we have 4 special guests with us, and we'll intro them in a second. Aaron and I are, my co-organizer in the back that you can't see, has helped to develop some questions to learn from these 4 people. We've also got some input from the internet. Thank you, the internet, yeah. But also, if you're watching on Twitch right now, I have the chat open, so feel free to ask a question at any time. And I'll also be opening up for questions in the audience here in a little bit too. Okay, so with all of that, let's do some quick intros. So could you give us your name, a brief career summary, and in-game or Game of Thrones?
My name is Rob. I guess you could just say I'm a programmer of sorts. What was the other question? Just a name?
In-game or Game of Thrones?
In-game. Hey, Rob, how do you feel about Postgres? I feel happy and supportive.
Hey, I'm Jeremy Greene. I am a developer and entrepreneur. I got started doing development when I was in college, working for a publishing company. And then after college, opened a web development shop with a buddy of mine. We did that for a while, and then I got into independent consulting. I've never seen a single episode of Game of Thrones, so in-game.
I love this, 2 for 2.
I'm Carmen Berlin. I'm a full-stack developer, and I've also never seen a single Game of Thrones. Never will, not my kind of thing, so in-game for sure.
My name is Doji Jakuma. I'm a full-stack developer / DevOps engineer. I've been in the industry for a while, and it's just fun in general. I am a huge Iron Man fan. If I could become Iron Man, that would be awesome. I'm not Iron Man, though. Robert Downey Jr. is just so sexy. Wait, I did not say that out loud.
Appreciate all the in-game support. This is a no spoilers stream and Ruby session. Okay, so I'm going to start out with some questions for all of you. Let's take turns answering them, and then we'll kind of open it up to whoever feels like they have something they want to share. So start off, how did you get started in tech? Learning, getting your first job, like what was your approach? What did you do?
So for me, this was a while back. I was a music performance major in college. Quickly learned that probably isn't going to be a sustainable career path. So then just went around talking to local companies in the area where I was going to college. Just started volunteering for one, just doing data entry and other stuff like OS maintenance for them, and that just turned into a job. And then the rest is history. This was maybe back like in '97.
So when I was starting to go to college, I very nearly became a music major. My dad, who was a band director, spent considerable effort kind of talking me out of that. And then I sort of just randomly chose, well, I kind of like computers, maybe.
Video games.
Yeah, and I like computers, I like video games. Maybe I'll try something along those lines. I sort of randomly picked electrical engineering, did that for a year or so until I had to start doing assembly language. Bailed out of that real quick. tried computer science for a little while, finally landed on computer engineering, and while I was in school, got a job at the publishing company where I started in tech support and then was allowed to sort of move to doing maintenance development, basically. But that was where I kind of learned that, oh, you can actually solve real problems that people have with computers and writing software. And then from there, just kind of ran with it. That's pretty much it.
I too picked poorly on my college major initially. I have a degree in journalism, and it's also not a super great industry, so I feel you. I realized pretty early on that it wasn't going to, be sustainable. It wasn't a long-term place to be, and I started learning on like Code Academy and code school, stuff like that. This was probably 2011, 2012. And from there, I got a job at a help desk type place and moved on from there.
I was a tuba performance major in college. This is a very strange coincidence. But actually, I'm kind of old, so I started learning about programming way back in GeoCities and Tripod. And it was like, where's.com, cracks.com, download Flash 3, learn how to make drop-down menus in that, and that was the extent of it. If you wanted to do anything cool, it had to be JavaScript. It wasn't until later that I went to grad school and decided to major in computer science that I really jumped into everything, but the same music thing as everybody else. So you can see like everybody just has random, we tried it and we're interested in computers kind of thing.
It's awesome. I love that. Okay, so we know the tech industry evolves and changes pretty quickly. So what trends have you seen in the past? And what trends do you see kind of going into the future? How do you evaluate those? How do you think about, I should get into this, I should watch this, or no, this is a fad, it's going to blow over?
We stood on the other end and we're...
There are lots of trends in the industry. I always feel that it's really difficult to keep up with how fast everything changes, especially in JavaScript world. But right now, a big trend, it seems very trendy now, but it's been this way for about 10 years, is automation and automating your processes so that you can get out software faster, which is where the whole DevOps thing is. And I think that's a big trend. Just automate what you can so that you don't have to do manual work and get it out as fast as possible.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, for trends that you see happening in the tech community, how do you evaluate those? Like, yes, I should get into this new thing, maybe I'll wait on this new thing, or nah, I'm not, that's gonna blow away, it's a fad.
I kind of think everything's a fad. I don't, let me think about this. So to me, what I always try to focus on is not like, oh, I want to learn this new framework that's out, it looks so slick, so cool. I always try to focus on like, how can you make your problem that you're trying to solve smaller? And by that I mean like, I'm trying to build an application that, I don't know, it's a CRUD app basically, like it has a database. And you put data into it and you get data back out. So like, how do I make this smaller? Like, how do I make my problem set smaller? And also, I'm a really big believer in working with what you already know. And so if you don't already know the fancy new framework, like, are you gonna be able to get something out pretty quickly? And so I think everything is a fad, basically.
So sort of like Carmen was saying, I usually try to make sure that I don't focus on the tech itself, but instead focus on the problems that I'm trying to solve. And generally, I don't reach for new tech until I see that I have a new problem that I can't solve with tech that I already know how to use. I do try to kind of keep an eye out for things that look interesting and will kind of dabble with them just on the side, but I really don't try to ever use anything that's really new and kind of untested for production apps. I kind of go with the mantra that production code should be boring and sort of well understood. And in a new application, it's not really the best place to test out new tech that's not battle tested.
Throughout my career, like, I was able to be there when we transitioned from x86 to x64 CPUs. That was terrible for 2 or 3 years until things got fixed. And then I was right there for when we started using more virtualization, and the hypervisors were terrible for 3 to 4 years. And then they got fixed. And then I was there, like, yeah, we have to move to SSDs, which also like was terrible for 3 to 4 years. So like, I kind of put in a 3 to 4 year buffer. And more recently, the other thing I've done is if something's really getting like overly hyped, like a new technology, I just kind of look at like how much money is backing it, because there's just so much market-driven development and so many marketing dollars behind like the tools that we're told to use. There's just so much at stake that sometimes it's good to, I'm not saying it's perfect, but look at how much money is driving the hype, and maybe just ignore it and let that money dry up and see what actually sticks afterwards.
What advice would you give new programmers starting today in today's tech world?
For new programmers starting the tech world, I would say don't make a video game. Anyone who's a programmer is like, a video game is a task that's going to be really difficult to start. I would probably say start with a web page, keep it simple, and then start building up from there. You learn HTML, you learn JavaScript, and then you might dive into something on the back end, which would be like Python or Ruby or anything. And once you get your feet wet, you'll start understanding where you want to go.
Yeah, I really agree with that. Something that I try to do, and I think this is maybe a little difficult to do at the beginning, but if you can try and force yourself to think in this way, it will just kind of help drive you along. So if you were building a website and you wanted it to have a form, for instance, and you put data into the form, don't worry at first about, oh my gosh, I need to learn HTML, CSS, JavaScript, blah, blah, blah. Don't worry about that. Think about like, okay, I want it to do number 1. And then after that happens, I want it to do next and next and next, and figure out like, what do you want it to do, and then worry about the tech. That's what I would recommend.
Yeah, I would echo everything that Carmen just said. I think a way to, something that's very helpful if you have the time and opportunity to do it, is to have a side project that is something that really speaks to you, that you want to work on and that you will be excited to work on, hopefully over an extended period of time, because that helps you see the process of maintaining a project over a long run and kind of understanding how upgrade cycles need to work and how you might advance it enough that, okay, now the tech that I'm using is not sufficient to solve the problems that I want to solve with this application, so now I'm going to look for something new that will help. That's been very useful for me over lots of years, having just side projects that are sort of low stress because they're mainly mine. People aren't really relying on them, so if they break, it's not a huge stress thing. If it goes down on Christmas, who cares? But having something that I want to use over a long period of time has really helped in being able to have sort of a bigger product focus instead of being way down in the weeds of what the tech itself is.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think maybe the only thing I'd consider adding is knowing that learning programming is kind of like a long haul, and there's going to be a lot of ups and downs. Think about maybe writing down your ideas of what you want to accomplish on a little project or whatever. And then 3 months later, do the same exercise again. And when you're learning and you start getting really frustrated, it might be a good time to go back and look at where you were 6 months ago or 9 months ago, and just some way to empirically reinforce wow, I've learned so much more since where I was 3 and 6 months ago. That might just be kind of that motivational. Find tricks to keep you motivated. That's really all I'd add.
Love it. Okay, these have been easy.
Also, get really good at Googling.
Stack Overflow is your friend. Okay, so these have been pretty easy so far. So let's talk about the real questions. Worst production mistake you've made? These can be open to anyone. You don't have to answer if you're contractually not allowed to say.
I was working on a legacy app at a company, and I wanted to get logging in because I had a boss who wanted me to prove everything. Let's take out this feature. Prove that it needs to be taken out. So I wanted to put in logging so that we could find out where the users were using what. And I didn't expect maybe 5,000 calls to the database per user to happen, and it locked up the database on the server, and we couldn't even get into the server, which is virtual, to restart it. We had to do a hard boot of the whole virtual environment. It was really bad. That was on me.
It's really rough. I'm so sorry. This actually didn't happen that long ago. I was doing some testing on some reports that they were like sales reports, and they needed to go out to these various managers, like pretty like high level managers, like 2 steps from the CEO, high level managers, like, and well, the reports weren't actually supposed to go to them. They were supposed to go to me. And what I didn't realize was that I was testing in production. And so the reports, they were bad. Like, they weren't like bad data. They were old data. But anyway, like the long story short is like make sure you're not testing in production, and don't email every district and regional manager in your company from your email. Don't do that.
Anyone else?
So back in the days when we were running our development agency, this was before any of the big cloud providers were around. We had, I think, one server that we leased from Rackspace that was, you know, our server, our physical machine that somebody had put in a rack, and we had come up for a OS upgrade. We were getting to the point that the OS that the thing was running on was so old that we couldn't install some new packages that we needed. So at the time, my normal procedure was, okay, I'm going to stay up till 2 a.m., then I can take all the sites down that are hosted on this machine. And we had, I don't know, dozens of clients all hosted on this one web server that was sort of it was a snowflake server, you know, lots of real hand, you know, config by hand, nothing automated. So stayed up till 2, took the thing down, tried to do the OS upgrade. Something went wrong, and the server was just completely borked. Like, I could not even SSH into the thing anymore. So we had dozens of clients that were down. We had not paid for the top tier of support from Rackspace at the time, so we couldn't get any midnight help. It was like, all right, we got to wait around till 8 a.m., and then we can maybe get somebody to help us. But it was pretty much, I think, a day-and-a-half outage by the time they got a new server online for us and got things reinstalled, and we could copy stuff from the old machine into the new one. It was not good. So moral of that story is go with what they call the red-blue deployment strategy, where you fire up a entirely new copy of your service, make sure everything runs there, and then take down the old one that you're trying to deprecate. Upgrades on a live production system are not good. Don't do it.
I'd say for me, like, all the same, like, matches and gasoline stories. But I'd say, like, for a large chunk of my career, also, like, when it comes to production, thinking I'm the smartest person in the room and that I alone can fix things, and not either asking for help or bringing other team members along to help me fix things so that there's more team understanding of how something works. That's probably one of the larger mistakes I've made.
Okay, so this is a career panel, so I want to shift to talking about career progression, career growth. In a lot of companies, there's kind of these 2 different tracks. You can become like a super developer, or you can move up into management, whether they call that like staff engineer, principal engineer, whatever. Based on your career, or Jeremy from the consulting angle is a totally different thing, what are ways that a newish or maybe like somewhat experienced engineer, like what's the path forward to growing your career, to stepping into higher ranked developer or management, and how do you get there?
Can you repeat the question?
So I have a couple years experience under my belt as a developer, and I want to either become more trusted, more respected, rise the ranks as a more respected senior developer, staff engineer developer, or I want to move into management. How do I do that? Switch jobs. Expand.
Well, I'd say, when you take a job, you're sometimes, while you're there, perceived at the position that you were hired into, and that can be a hard rut to get out of. Maybe the place you're working at, like even though you're interested in management, you know that the place you work at is a tire fire, and that's not where you want to be a manager. So I think in today's current tech and job economy, I would switch jobs, get the experience, and also just get the raise of switching jobs. I don't think it's much more complicated than that.
I think that is great advice. I think there's a lot of truth to the fact that in many organizations, it's hard to kind of climb the ranks past a certain point because you get pigeonholed, and that it is sometimes necessary to switch to a new organization so that you can just be perceived in a different way by the people in the organization.
It's not perfect advice.
Yeah, it's not perfect. It's not always the case. There are downsides to doing that. But I think one way that you can start to kind of climb the ranks in an organization is to just be more proactive about the types of things that you take on and the types of tasks that you do. And that just basically means instead of looking at your project management board and looking for the things that are assigned to you and just picking up tasks and marking them off, it's raising new issues that, hey, I've noticed we have this weird thing that happens in production when X happens, and I think we could probably fix that if we do this. That just illustrates that you are paying attention and do care about making things better and helping the organization in a way that you can't really do if you're just being reactive and just taking the tasks that are assigned to you.
Anything else to add?
So I'd like to add to that you have to understand that there is a time where at a company you're not going to have a path up or a path to a different part of what you want to do. And this is really difficult, but it's understanding the company culture and saying, if I talk to the right people, if I'm communicative enough, if I help enough, is that something that's going to open up to me or not? And having experienced it at different companies where at one company it was, well, that's not going to happen, so I had to leave. Or working at a different company where it was like, oh, well, you can do this too? Well, we're open to you helping out as long as you're going to communicate and help other people. That's something that you need to do. On that vein of staying in a company and moving into a different position, you have to take your own professional development seriously. And this is hard because it can be boring, it can be stressful. You have to read books. You have to keep up with the industry, you have to be knowledgeable, and you have to practice. And it's your own time that you're using for this, not company time. But without doing that, you're not going to have the skills to say, I can do this too. It's also okay to generalize. You don't have to be just a programmer. You can be a programmer / something else, and that brings value to any business.
I like that we keep refining stuff. That's good.
Iterative approach.
Iterative approach. That's why we have all four of you.
I would add also just talking to your manager or whoever you report to and make them aware that you're looking for opportunities to move up, because a lot of organizations will be looking for ways to kind of fill their upper ranks, and if they don't know that they have people internally that are interested in that, they're likely to look outside.
I'll add to that. I will say that this has all been, I think, really fantastic advice. And unfortunately, though, it can kind of feel like sometimes you want to move up, you want to change directions or something like that, and you feel like that's not going to happen. You kind of talked about this a little bit. I think the best way to figure out, like Rob mentioned, maybe change jobs. The best way to figure out, should I change jobs or should I keep on here, is you ask them, say, hey, I want to do this thing. Can I do this thing? And then based on their response, and it may not be, sure, you can do that right now. It may be, oh, you need to wait 3 months. You need to do X, Y, Z first. See if that is the case. And then that'll give you the knowledge that you need to know, like, do I stay here or do I move on?
I like that advice too, because one, it helps you start to determine if you're at an organization that even has their stuff together. And it also gives you that kind of data point of like, if they said like, yeah, after this next project, we'll let you try something new or move on. You also have that kind of line in the sand to say, that event happened and they didn't keep up with what they told me. So the chances of progressing here are very much diminished. Like this is kind of stuff like if you're on the fence and you need some way to start figuring out which way to lean. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I like that. If you don't ask, you'll never know. Okay, so one question from Twitch, and then I'll open it up for the audience to ask, so be ready. Thoughts around doing consulting or contracting versus a full-time job. What do you think about that? I'll even throw like side projects, entrepreneurial ventures. How do you think about and handle all those things?
The biggest difference in consulting and contracting from full-time employment is that when you're in full-time employment, you can really focus 100% of your working time on the job or the tech or whatever it is that you're working with. And when you're doing consulting and contracting, you have to spend a significant portion of your working time doing business things that are not tech things. You've got to do sales, you've got to do marketing, you have to talk to potential clients. So if those sort of things sound interesting to you, in addition to doing the tech work, consulting and contracting could be good. If those things sound like getting your teeth pulled, full-time employment might be a better option for you. Those aren't the only concerns, but those are some of the big ones. And I've seen people that were very excited about getting into contracting and consulting just completely fall down because they did not want to do any sort of business development activities. And so they were just starved for work because they weren't bringing in business. And there's sort of some of the same things that go on if you're going to have software, build a SaaS that you're going to run. You need to do marketing and sales for it. I am not real great at doing those things. I do a marginally passable job and have a few SaaSes running that people pay me for, but it's something that I should get better at. But it's a hard thing to do because for me, those are sort of unknown areas of activity. And when I sit down to work, it's real easy to say, okay, there's a job that I don't entirely know how to do on the sales and marketing side, and then there's the tech stuff that I can attack right now and get it knocked out. And it's real easy to always go for the thing that's easy to get knocked out and never spend dedicated time getting better at those business activities that are crucial to doing something other than full-time employment. And then there are also sort of stability issues. Depending on how you structure consulting and contracting engagements, a full-time job can be a lot more stable in terms of income and other benefits, health insurance, all that sort of thing.
I spent a good chunk of my career doing full-time work and contracting just to make money, make ends meet. Then also got at some point, that just doesn't work, working constantly. So that's when I started working and really refining just extremely aggressive salary negotiations. So I could just do a full-time job to make all the money I need and then use entrepreneurial work or just contracting work as kind of motivational or being optimistic about tech again or just for fun.
So I want to focus in on that real quick. come back to you in a second. On Rob, I think you're one of the best people I know when it comes to finding and negotiating job salary stuff. So could you kind of expand how do you think about that? What's your process going into an interview or a job?
You used the word practice earlier. Lots of practice. Lots of, like in the same way you're learning a technology and you're taking notes and you're refining what works, it's that same thing of, I started kind of working on the system about 10 or 11 years ago. So by the time I started meeting John and stuff, I have a lot of it down, or I'm real comfortable with it, but it still just takes work, takes time practicing, it takes time researching companies, seeing how much money they have, keeping track of what average salaries are, or what expected salaries are, and I don't know, just practicing enough to have a whole lot of confidence when you deal with the process. And also just asking. If you know someone that works there, what are you making? I know, there's a financial reason companies don't want you to talk about that, but that's not your problem. Because you control your career and you have some control over your salary. So, kind of do whatever you can to influence that. Within ethical and legal means. But I don't know, just lots of practice, interviewing, getting a system down for interviewing. Being able to position yourself so that you're not. Technical interviews at some places, it's the weird, Mensa projects of stuff that's not even applicable to programming. So even just, in the last, half decade or so, practicing talking and working with the executive level to establish value there, and skip the whole, technical proving ground step. When the exec at the company is telling the people to hire you, that changes a lot, where you can start negotiating salary-wise. Just the different hoops you have to jump through. Just a whole bunch of little tricks like that, and circumstances are always a little different where you're at your career. But pick a process, refine it, iterate it.
And this is going back to the full-time or consulting / side freelance. Now that we're off the pay, I'm going to tie this back to personal development, because personal development is really important. Depending where you are in life and your life situation, consulting might not be what you can do, but maybe you want to do that. Or maybe you're full-time and you want to learn something different. Why not do a little bit of both, where you can full-time and then maybe you want to learn design too, so that you can be a programmer unicorn designer. Why not do a side project where you are getting paid to do design, and then you're getting yourself paid for learning? And the reason why I say this is the climate, at least in the United States, as of a long time ago, is employers aren't going to usually pay for your own personal development. And it costs money. Courses cost $600 to $4,000 thereabouts. And if you're interested, you want to pursue it, if you want to move up, you need to have proof that you're putting in the effort to do it. But that $4,000 course on something isn't attainable. Maybe not now, not with what you're doing, but if you can get paid to kind of learn those competencies and then pursue that, that's also a really good way to maybe change around, do your personal development, and then go consulting if you want to, if you're looking for that flexibility.
Anything to add? Okay, questions from the audience. I'm not afraid of long, awkward silence. Yes?
What advice would you give to somebody that's just starting out, but having cold feet about picking a language to get started, because they think that the time they spend learning that language won't yield a job?
I like that. What advice would you give to somebody who is starting out but is hesitant to pick a language because time learning that language may not result in the job?
So my belief there is that you're going to learn the logic to building a program. So I've talked about through this, don't think about the tech, think about what you're trying to do, think about what you're trying to solve. And a lot of languages are like C-based, so they're going to be really similar syntactically anyway. And then also another thing you can do if you really feel that you need to pick something that's going to get you a job is look at job listings. Like around OKC, C# is like a big hot thing. And so I ended up taking a C# job last time I was looking around. But because I had already spent time learning JavaScript in my case, I was able to take, again, those logical components of like, I understand how to build a program in this language. I just need to take it and do it in this language. And that has been really invaluable for me.
I'd say, like, if you live in the Oklahoma area and you're just not even really sure what to do or where to get started, just pick C#, learn whatever possible to get the entry job into the crappiest company you can. This is unfortunately very practical advice. And get there, and then let them start paying you to learn and develop your skills, and then just plan on being gone 12 months afterwards for a better job and a significantly higher rate of pay. If you already like some other language like Ruby or whatever, keep playing with that and having fun. My career's spanned, like from VB to C# to F# to .let down to IIS, and SQL Server to Ruby to Elixir. Like every language I've been able to be exposed to, and just getting pretty decent at like one language really sets you up, and learning how to build programs for any other language. But again, if you're new, just pick the lowest common denominator for our area, C#, get paid, learn other skills, leave.
So just to kind of echo that, looking at where you want to be, like the region, what languages are good for that region, C# is really big here. So C# is non-starter. You need to do C# if you want to get entry level here. However, there's a website called Hyperpolygot, if you've ever been to it. And on Hyperpolygot, it's just, if you know this programming language and you want to do the same thing in this programming language, this is how to do it. Programming is just if stuff, switch stuff, loop stuff, save stuff. And it's basically, once you've learned it in one, picking up another language is just how they write it and how they do it. And I actually have a question for the panelists, because I'm sure a lot of them are in the same position, but could you give like your top 3 best languages and then 2 other languages that you use just because, or more, or whatever? Just so they know that it isn't, you need to know this one language.
I don't even have 3 that I really use. I use JavaScript and C# every single day.
Yeah, I am basically on a 2-language diet right now, Ruby and JavaScript. Use sort of variations on those for some automation tools. At this point, I think I sometimes do enough YAML that you could maybe consider that a programming language. It's at least a declarative configuration language. But yeah, I mean, just having a few under your belt really helps.
I have to start with SQL. Like it's something to really pick up and provides a tremendous amount of business value, which translates to money. And outside of that, I personally really like Ruby a whole lot. It's so practical, gets so many things done, and I know like maybe it gets knocked because it doesn't solve imaginary scale problems. But like, I don't know, it's so practical and ubiquitous and easy for anyone to learn. Like that's one I like. I also, again, personally like Go. That's just me. I'm terrible at functional programming, so I don't recommend it. That's a personal problem. Like, lots of people are successful.
Anything reply to that? So Taco Bandit in the chat asks, what would you recommend for someone who feels like they're not learning much at their current job? Should I get a new job or stick it out for a year at least? I've been there about half a year. So maybe like, how do you learn, continue to grow in a job where you're stuck? And then also, what is a reasonable amount of time to stay before jumping ship?
Not perfect advice, but just trying to give you any sort of like baseline. If you're 6 months in, I would think about like making a decision or moving on at the year mark, knowing that you have 6 months to do some experiments, like with your manager. What are just some basic measurable things that you can look for change in 6 months? And if none of that happens, then you should be able to really confidently switch jobs without any feeling of regret. And that could be, again, like, can you put me on a new project? Or can we try this, this approach to this problem? And there might be legitimate reasons to not do that, and they should be able to communicate that. If they can't, again, like that's more signal of like this place doesn't have together. There's not much career growth here. I should plan on being gone 6 months from now. What do I need to happen to build up and make sure that transition is successful for me as a person?
I would say if you can do interviews, that there's not a huge downside to just doing the interviews. I mean, you don't have to take the job. You could stay where you're at. So it's, Rob has described this to me as playing with house money. So that's an option. And then if you feel like you're not learning at work and there's something that you want to learn, and you can, and I'm super aware that like not everybody can, dedicate time outside of work. Lots of people have other responsibilities. I'm one of them, so I totally get it. But if you can do a side project, learning a language, I said at the beginning that I'm a big believer in like using what you know, which like I totally am for when you know what you're trying to build and you're trying to ship it. But if you just want to learn a new language or framework because you're seeing a lot of jobs on the job board that call for this, taking a side project and working on it in that language is a really great way to learn it if it's not happening at work.
So just to kind of add to what Carmen said, taking interviews, you can always do that. And each interview that you take is practice at doing an interview, especially if you choose these companies that you don't want to go to. Going and showing up for an interview is practice. You don't get good at speaking unless you speak a lot. You don't get good at anything unless you do that thing a lot. And to land a good job, you need the practice of taking interviews. Additionally, don't get stuck on the this is my dream job and I applied and I didn't get it. Just keep tossing out resumes because you never know when a good opportunity from a company that wasn't marketing itself well but is actually really good is going to come. And if you didn't put your resume in the pool, you don't get a shot at it.
I love that. Practicing interviews seems so weird, but obviously very, very practical. Yes, question in the back.
I know I'm not on the panel, but my first job at college I had for 7 months, and I thought, I don't think there's a minimum. It just was not at all what they described.
So he said his first job out of college, there for 7 months and left. There's no minimum.
Yeah, again, I'd also say like just in the modern job scene in the economy, it's not like maybe like what some of our parents experience of like, yeah, you have to stay there for 5 years, otherwise it looks bad on your career record or whatever. No, like there's companies burning down everywhere, right? Like some companies don't even make it 5 or 6 months. So like it's not abnormal to have like these short windows because like there's so much trash. Something else I was gonna say, but I forgot because it doesn't matter.
Speaking of trash, any thoughts of like identifying or strategies of handling burnout?
That's a good question. Thoughts or strategies on handling burnout?
For me, it's intentionally setting aside time to do things that are not work that I enjoy, that recharge me. Like I said at the beginning, I was this close to being a music major, and I took all of my enthusiasm for music and now let my tech career support my music habit. I spend a good amount of time just in my studio space, just kind of screwing around, making music, having fun, without having real production goals set for that. It's just a thing that I can do because I enjoy doing it, and the activity of doing it helps recharge me and helps avoid that feeling of burnout where I feel like I've just been working myself raw.
On the theme of practice, start practicing saying no. Also, like if you're burnt out and you're realizing you're burnt out, maybe think about that. It wasn't one weekend that got you burnt out. It's probably been a developing problem, and you're not going to get out of it in 1 weekend. Like there's no magic mana potion you drink to say like, oh, yay, you're like health restored. Like just be prepared for like a grind of saying no and backing away and just let yourself heal. I'm like, talk to a therapist. Like I don't know. You have to figure out what works for you. And another thing to think about too, like this is your first time experiencing burnout. maybe like write down how you're feeling and maybe like what got you there, because you probably still have a lot of career left in you. And again, if there's not much you can do about being burnt out now, maybe there's different things that you can be thinking about doing to prevent it in the future, like once you start recovering.
Being deliberate about taking time off and taking vacations also helps a lot. I've known people that would let their vacation time roll over year to year and get to where the company owes them 6 or 8 weeks of vacation time. And it's easy to look at that and think, okay, they're going to pay me out for that time and that's a bonus. But in my estimation, that's a bad trade. You're better off taking the time off, giving yourself time to recharge where you're not thinking about work, and that will come back to you multiplied more than those dollars would.
Okay, probably.
I also want to add too, like we've been talking a lot about people like new to programming, or trying to get out of that maybe like an entry level tier. Also, like recognizing that is a grind to learn like this new skill of programming. It is mentally taxing. It can be emotionally taxing. Like again, just be cognizant too of if you're getting started and trying to learn so much and just feeling inadequate like we all do around it. Like that's going to be an emotional burden, and get ready to take some time too to like kind of deal with that. Is how it's a grind.
So yeah, go for it.
On the note of the difficulty and the grind, it's easy to get frustrated. It's easy to think that, why don't I understand that this is easy? And just to share something embarrassing in front of all these programmers that are here, I taught myself C++ twice, and I didn't understand assignment, which is critical for programming. I would say, okay, well, in math, if 3 equals 1 plus 2, then that's awesome. So then how come I can't say this is A equals B plus C, and there are no values stored and there's no memory for it, and it just doesn't make sense. There are lots of times it doesn't make sense until you get that little speck of, I understand it. And it is pushing yourself through that grind to get to the point where you understand it.
I would say too, if you are learning, like we talked about, like it is a grind. It totally is. Like I don't want to sugarcoat that for anybody. There will be times where it's very, very lame. But in my experience, for me, it's best to like just it took me a long time to realize this, but there's going to be times where I'm like super amped and I'm like, I want to work on this 24/7. I don't want to sleep. I want to this is what I want to be doing. And then there's other times where I'm like, oh my gosh, if I see another computer, I'm going to throw it out the window. So just like, it took me a long time to accept that like that's an okay thing. I feel like there's something in our industry where it's like, it's kind of ironic because like it's a pretty well-paying industry, but at the same time, like you should love it so much that you do it for free in your free time. And so just for me, recognizing that like it's totally okay that there's going to be some things that really, really interest me sometimes, and I'm going to put a lot of myself into that. And then there's going to be other times where I just don't want to, and that's okay, and I should not do it in the times that I don't want to.
So we probably have time for one more question. It's put in the chat. I think it's a great one. So for people who are maybe leaving high school or just coming to programming, just totally new at any stage in life, do you recommend college for that person? If not, or in addition to college, what would you add or substitute to that to get into programming?
If the only goal is to get into programming, then obviously not on college. There's benefits to college and the collegiate experience outside of like, I need a programming job now. There's a lot of options out there, whether it's boot camp, like thinking about like the trade school path of like boot camps or whatever. I don't know, but if your only goal is just a programming job, college is not probably very poor value.
What would you do instead?
Under the notion that a programming job is my only goal and I'm in high school, first, does your school have a computer lab? How much, talk to the lab instructor or whatever, like how much can you do and get away with in the lab for any sort of professional skill? Make sure you're paying attention in your English classes, learning to read and write. If you're in high school, you're probably taking physics classes, like really think about the scientific method and the values of experimentation or safe experimentation, because that's gonna be pretty applicable in a professional job of where, oh, test failed, oh, test failed, oh, test failed, right? Like, I need to do something different. And then I'd think about, because you're young and you probably don't have a whole lot of responsibility, what's maybe the cheapest or easiest path, again, to try and get that entry-level job? That's right, maybe look like an online boot camp or something to where you can really take advantage of the lack of just like real serious life again, assuming you have no real serious life responsibility at that point, like, you know, like no kids, no mortgage, any of that. Just experiment. Maybe try like some boot camp. See what you can get in a couple months of like just really focusing and treating like your education or your professional development as a full-time job. Just see what happens.
Yeah, I would echo what Rob said, that there are definite advantages to the collegiate experience outside of a career path. And so I am hesitant to just flat out not recommend college, but also it's worth saying that for the vast majority of, especially entry and mid-level programming jobs, a degree is not required. There will be some companies that will try to tell you that they require a computer-related degree for entry-level jobs. That, more often than not, is a red flag about that company not understanding their business and what they do and how they deliver what they do. That's not always the case, but in a lot of cases, you'll see people that kind of inflate their job requirements because they think that they need to or whatever, and they haven't taken a real hard look at what it is they need people to do for them. So college is great. I had a lot of fun in college, but I don't use my degree on a day-to-day basis in my job. And I know plenty of people that do exactly the same job that I do at the same level of skill that didn't go to college one day in their life.
I was also in a fortunate enough position to, when I went to college, I was in a privileged state to where like it didn't cripple my professional career for 20 or 30 years afterwards. Another thing to factor on the whole, like, can I go to college or not? Right, like it's probably not worth it if it's gonna be just financially crippling. And again, your primary goal is a programming job.
I don't know that I have anything like very, very different to say. I was not super fortunate. I have a ton of debt from going to college for a degree that I do not use. It would be really hard for me to say, like, definitely don't go to college because, like Jeremy mentioned, there are jobs where they're like, you must have a college degree. And, like, if that's what you want, then, like, that does seem like that's probably the way you're going to have to go. But if you're in high school, then I would definitely look at lots of high schools have programs where you can take college classes for free. I would look at that. I would look at VOTEC. I think that VOTEC is, like, really seriously underrated. And then also, like we mentioned before, like just build something. Like that's probably more than anything, I think, going to get people's attention when they're looking at you versus somebody else. Well, this person has their GitHub on their resume, and when I look at their GitHub, they have this like fully functioning app. This person does not. So think about that too.
And just to add to everything, once again, this is my opinion, but I personally feel that college is very, very expensive, prohibitive, in fact. I am almost 40. I just finished paying for college last year, and it was a music degree. Thank you. It was a music degree. However, the value in college is not that college is going to teach you how to do a job. If you see lots of companies, they say people that are fresh out of college don't know how to do my job. That's because each company is unique. Each job is unique. Understanding the process and how to learn is important. So if you're going to college to understand how to learn, there is lots of value in it. But I would personally try, and if it's just programming, try and find the cheapest way, like everyone said, to get into it, because there is value in it. Another thing is, right now, like I'm almost 40, and if you're just coming out of high school and you're young, I remember being in like high school and, like I said, learning Flash. I could stay up until 4 a.m. learning Flash. It was so awesome. I was learning all of this knowledge. And now if I want to stay up 4 a.m., like the next day I'm a zombie at work, like I can't do it. So use that youth to learn and teach yourself all those nights that you can stay up, because it will go and there's a time that you won't be able to use it to your advantage.
also want to say, like when I went to in-state major university in the 90s, with my scholarship, I think my first year or my first semester of tuition was like around $500. So again, keep in mind, when I'm giving advice, I'm like, yeah, college has lots of benefits. That was like how much I was paying at that time, and I think that's something to think about, like price anchor wise, when I'm saying yeah, college is great, because there might be a lot of other people that just really didn't have to pay a lot for college for whatever reason at the time that they went to college, saying yeah, college is great. When if you're trying to go to college now, it might be a considerably different story.
Okay, real quick, we are so close on time.
To add, don't dismiss things like community colleges and associate's degrees. It's a very quick way, usually very inexpensive, depending on how you learn.
Yes, don't dismiss community colleges or associate degrees. Great advice. Okay, we are over time. Thank you so much for everyone who's here, everyone watching on Twitch. Can we give a round of applause for our amazing panelists? If you would like to follow them on the Twitters, we have already tweeted out their handles, but we will do it again at OKCRB. You can also follow this group. Thanks so much. See everyone next time.